DW Conversations. Usahang katungod, usahang kinahanglanon. Pag-iristorya ita ang kinahanglan ng pag-iristoryahan. DW Conversations.
Today is Monday, Monday na. Yes, ika-28 ito November. Kumusta ang mga taga-Sabang nga nagpatron pero wala pang imbitar. Pero nasa rin ipatron ko no diri na talaga it nangingimbitar. Pero maupi mang ganaghapit it napahagaya kay at least you know that you're expected. Kasi, di ba, hikita na respeto, madamang kuntak kita, di ba, iton, mga tagbalay. Kasi, di rin sugadhan una, di ba, magkakadatang. Pero, may ada namit mga tao nga, you know, they also want to make sure nga, you know, hindi, kasi atas ito yung panahon niya, bangin man diri nag-aandam or gutay la naman ang preparation.
Sorry, board again kami.
Para diri naman kinakalasan. Pero wala talaga nagpahagaya. My goodness. Ngaran-ngaran lang nga may dahinang din hinudo nga mga kaupo din na mataga Sabang. Ano sa pagod? Ikinkita ko pag-inhiranan bisperas. Siya talaga ito wala. Balita mga kasayin, sorry Emily, not feeling well. Please be very careful nga din kita natatariktihan. You know, there are just some mornings nga pagmamatanim, parang itong feeling paghihiragnatan ka, no? O istig na nga pagbabagiton ating panahon. But anyway, for every one of you out there, nagpapadayon, itong aton Surf in the City Festival, maupay iniyan na. Pero maupay, dagit balad pero pastikalan at nga uurang kagabi makalilisang, sanglit babaha, makita kay tubig dida kulay kape or kulay tsokolate nga, no? But, you know, still we are inviting you, dami itong mga tao. And also, this is a good opportunity kasi may ada naman kita dida Surf in the City trade fair. May ada dida mga nagbabalighin mga souvenir items, may ada dida magbabalighin mga pagkaon, may nga dida nagluluto-luto. You know, exciting ini ko na kuala naman talaga iton panahon. But yesterday was good, no? The weather was fine, kinooperar. So that was also good for the business. Mga small entrepreneurs natin nga, you know, nasingapot naman insuga din ng mga opportunities. So, sa yung pangalan ni Rupert Ambiel, mga sa ito mga tagdusuin hini, from different places, kadadamo itong mga lugar nga represented yan at dida naman hini nga surfing competition because maram kamo we were made to understand nga di ba kwan ini this is a ano ba to a tour, no? So at the end of the year, susuma total hini iton points nga na-earn sa mga surfer kasi may hinahabol yan sila. To be included in the pool hiton mga surfers, hiton national team. Kasi di ba dyan sa, I think in the Olympics they already have surfing in the ASEAN and maybe in the Asian Games may surfing na. So if you know, magaling ka, chances are mahibubulig ka din hiton national pool of athletes for surfing and damo iton mga perks nga kinakarawat ini. So, asya niton binubuhat ini nga aton mga surfers, they go around the country, didahin mga competition nga kumbaga sanctioned hiton UPSA, United Philippine Surfing Association. They earn points during, for instance, this is I think the ipang ilang leg ini hiton nga the national championships, no? At the end of the year, so sumatotalon itong irahin ni points, no? Tapos may ano pa nga pala ito, the higher the prize money, the higher the points nga inahatag. So it is one of the reasons kung kaya ano nga dami itong mga athletes who are here in Borongan pag baka sakali, no, to add up to their points. So nalilipay kita hinhini. Kaduha, we are inviting you to join the Bikini Open. This is sort of a hybrid competition, no? This is presented by the provincial government and the Borongan City Press Club. So, maram kamo ako na notice, no? Most of those who are, nag-a-apply to join, most of them are not from here, no? Mga taga-Ormoc, in parts of Leyte, Northern Samar, in Tacloban. May taga-Borongan pero guti ay lang. Kasi ibang discipline ito, no? This is a different discipline, more than yung mga beauty contest natin, nga may mga swimsuit competition. This one is different kasi bisan yung criteria for judging is different. So ito, males and females, no? So, Mr. and Miss. So, we are inviting you. You only have until tomorrow para naman mag-submit iton yung entries, and then in the morning of November 30, we will be announcing kung hino itong mga ma-qualify kasi hindi naman lahat. We are limiting hiton aton candidates to 7 for males and 7 for females. Iton aton competition will be on December 2. That's Friday in the evening, natural. Di may Boulevard kay naaangay lang, di ba? So we are inviting you taga diin. Kuan ini ito natin gini-invite yung mga taga Region 8 and iton mga surfers nga nakumpitiya na didahiton aton surf in the city. Bisan kung diri hira taga Region 8, basta competing surfers sira, they are qualified to join. Right? Now, niya na nakalabay na Sabado, naging bisita naton dinhi, and we really had kuan ba mas damuan aton mga naintindihan, because even kung pero katuig na tikang hibalik ang balang higabels, may ada pa mga butang nga diri naton manggod na hibabaruan kasi kahibalikan mga lingganay ang nagsasara nga mga notisya, parang isang tao ang ang responsible for this, no? Diri ila iniusang nga tao, and it took decades, hindi isang linggo, hindi isang buwan, the negotiation and the nitty-gritty, yung mga frustrations ba. And one of the persons who was on board from day one, actually he started the ball rolling, but he was not here when the bells were returned, no? And it was the first time last Saturday nga kinita hiya. Sa pangalan niya, parang iba, because he saw the bells, hanakad do iniha Wyoming, dito ha, Estados Unidos, dito ha, Fort Camp Warren, whatever is that. He saw the bells. Pero kung sina iba na hanaan, iisa lang yung, kung baga sa rin paniya, diri pa tangpos baga. Kasi this person actually, he is not a Catholic. No, he is not a Catholic. Pero, sa rin paniya, talagang pinaniguruhan nila nga mahibalik. Nga dahan simbahan kung diin inipinuha. Pero sa rin paniya, the ultimate kung anhini reason was for it to be returned to be used, no, to call people to worship. So parang yung inaano nila kasi diri pa iniaadahin sa mga kampanaryo, diri pa manggad talaga iniha nang gagamit, dahil itong ikinaadlaw nga kinabuhi dida naman ha simbahan, di ba, magmimisa, nagtitililing-tililing, eto hindi pa to nagagamit. Parang sarang pa niya, more than it being a tourist attraction, it should be used para naman hiton hiton iya talaga ungad nga katuyuanan. So I am talking about, and Mr. Sunny Sampayan, his name has been mentioned many times, especially the former Bishop Pedroso, the people in the States, because Mr. Sunny Sampayan is a Filipino, pero he is a retired U.S. Air Force ba? Isa sa mga military services in the United States. And iya asawa is from Mondragon in Northern Samar, but they have been living in the States na, no? So, upod ni Sir Sunny, ang usahan mga journalists in the Philippines nga talagang naghatag hiyahin oras, he did research, he traveled para makuha ang istorya about the Balangiga Bells. I am talking about Mr. Abner Mercado, a journalist. He was formerly with ABS-CBN, pero yan na, he is teaching full-time at the University of the Philippines, no? In mass communication. So, I had the chance halipot nga pakikipag-istorya haira para madaman iton aton kadaman nga mga tao mahibaro han mga isang pangani behind the scenes, no? Han mga paniguro para mahibalik ang mga lingganay han palamiga nga niya ato. If we have that video, guide.
DW Conversations. It's about people. It's about issues. It's about us. DW Conversations. Usahang katungod, usahang kinahanglanon. Pag-iristorya ita ang kinahanglan pag-iristorya. DW Conversations.
Good morning mga kasangkayan. This is VW Conversations. I hope that everyone is okay. Maram ka mo mga kasangkayan nila nga adlaw, napakaswerte natin. Diri mag-iiha kasi yan nga December. Ginmamarkahan natin niyan pagkahibalik ang mga lingganay han Balaniga. Kataliwan hin kamaiha nga mga tuig na paghininyapo natin, nahibalik ini ngani nagkakamayada kita duha nga mga selebrasyon pagkaka-Setyembre, and then idahiton Disyembre, gin sa saling-urog hiton simbahan, iton pagkahibalik kini nga mga lingganay. Pero maram ka mo, may ada ini, madamang nga mga istorya nga, waray kahi istorya, waray kahi gawas, didahan na kalabay nga mga tuig, particular didahan panahon nga inabot ini nga mga lingganay nga ni, may ada mga istorya nga, wara kahi sumat, and siguro yan na asya na iton panahon para mahi-istoryangan, mahibaroan niyo nga tanan. Diri la iton mga testihanan kay diri la mga taga Eastern Samar ang nagpinaniguro para mahibalik ini. Actually, chadi nga akan dudo nga kahampang diin mga taga nini aton ha Eastern Samar. Pero gidadakui ang ira parte, gidadakui ang ira mga paniguro para mahibalik adun nga mga lingganay. So, magmi-mix-mix lang kita mga kasangkayan. We have here Mr. Sunny Sampayan, who is a retired US Air Force. And then, of course, Sir Abner Mercado. Sino naman ang hindi nakakakilala? Sir nga kayo, chance ako naman pakapag-interview yan na. Kinasa nga kilalang journalist, no?
Ako naman ngayon ang may interview. Dati ako nag-i-interview, Ma'am Eden.
Pero alam mo, mas ano yan eh, mas exciting.
Yes.
Parang, anong gagawin mo? Dati taga-tanong ka, ngayon ikaw ang tatanong. So, anyway, thank you very much for taking time na magkakwentuhan tayo. Hindi masyadong mag-English ba, Sir Sunny, no? But we can do it in a mix.
Sure.
Ano. So, maram ka magsangkay. Most of us, most of you do not know, I know, si Sir Sunny, he really worked hard behind the scene, no? For the recovery of the bells. Diri la sa duha ka tuig, but maraming taon. Sir, kwentuhan mo nga kami, paano ito, I mean, ano ba yung reason kung, you know, sobra yung you know, efforts ninyo, when in fact you are not from Eastern Samar, and parang pamaksakan, Sir Sunny is not a Catholic, no? At iton nga mga lingganay, gintatag iya iton, hansimbahan nga katuloy. Kwentuhan mo nga kami, sir, kung anong mga events that led you to this.
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your program,
Thank you.
along with of course, my dear Mr. Mercado here. But ako naman po, when I was stationed sa Europa, started in about think it was probably about 1993, maybe anyway, so 1993, I think, was when I was over in Europe. I was attending a commander's call. And then our commander, sabi niya po, you are the unofficial ambassadors of the United States of America. And we expect that you as the unofficial ambassadors to go out there and make better relationship between our communities and our allies. So like when I heard that, it's like, oh my goodness, like I never thought myself as an official ambassador. So when this issue came up, and of course the World War II veterans issue, they both came up at the same time because they both came up in 1997, 1998 timeframe. So then ako talaga like, oh my goodness, I'm a Filipino born first and foremost. So I have a Filipino heart, syempre. So I said to myself, you know what? My colonel said that we are unofficial ambassadors, so maybe I can use the Filipino side in me and maybe improve the relationship between our two countries. So that's what got me started, because I did lobby for the World War II veterans. I went to Congress, knocked on doors, lobbied for their benefits. And then, of course, I also went to U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, even the White House, lobbied for the return of the church spell. So that's what got me involved, because I was reminded that I am an official ambassador of the United States of America. That's what started.
In the first place, how did you get to know about the bells? Kasi dito nga sa Eastern Samar, yung younger generation, hindi nila alam about the bells.
I did not know anything about the bells myself until I read an article in one of the Filipino American newspapers in San Francisco, I believe it was. And I read in that article about the plight of the World War II veterans. And then on that same article, they were talking about the Balangige bells. Like, what's that all about? I mean, of course, nobody ever told me what the Balangige bells was all about. As I returned to Ramstein Air Base in Germany, I learned more and more and more. And then, of course, I learned more about the World War II veterans. I learned more about Balangige bells, and of course, I learned more about my country, the Philippines. So that's what got me started. And the more I did more research, the more I got involved in it. And then next thing you know, I was writing letters to Congress, writing letters to senators, and then eventually made my trip to Capitol Hill and started knocking on doors. And we made some progress, but every time we made progress, there was always the Wyoming veterans, or the delegation from Wyoming. They have always blocked the return of the bells. Every time the bells issue came up, they would insert a rider to prevent the bells from being returned. And that went on for, I don't know how many years or maybe how many decades. So we spoke with our veterans colleagues in Wyoming. I went up to Wyoming in 2004. And some of them actually voted for the return of the church bells. The vote, I believe, was 7-4, 7 in favor, 4 against, that the United States should return the church bells. And then while we were continuing the process, the 4 made the effort to stop the church bells from being returned, and then subsequently the bells were never returned home. And then, of course, there's a thing called NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. This is part of what Congress do. They legislate, and what they do in the NDAA is they put a rider on a defense bill. They insert a line in there that's basically prohibits the return of the church bells. So that's what we're faced with for so many years. And then once that end came, then once they have inclination that we were going to continue lobby for the return, then they would go ahead and contact their lawmakers and again put a rider to the NDAA, which again extended the prevention of the church bells from being returned. So that's what happened in Congress.
So, sir, anong taon nag-start yung iyong efforts? And then how did you get in contact with mga pari, bishops, and other people from the Diocese of Boronga?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. I started in about 1997, 1998, I think it was. And because of what happened, and let me kind of back up a little bit here. I spoke with my veterans colleagues in Wyoming. What I learned subsequently to the initial contact was that the veterans in Wyoming, they were prepared to return one church bell and keep the other one. But what had happened was there was a film documented that was shown in Wyoming to the veterans, and the film was called Savage Acts, and it showed what what the Americans did to the Filipino people. And of course, you show something that negative, it got the veterans riled up. So at the conclusion of the showing of this documentary, the veterans, instead of supporting the one for one, they lobbied their lawmakers and prevented the return of any church bells. So basically, that's what happened. And of course, there was a cooling off period up until about 2000, maybe 2002. We realized that okay, that rider on the NDAA is no longer in effect. So we'll go ahead and get a jump start. So I asked my colleague, Miss Yolanda Stern. So we had a meeting in California with Miss Jean Wald. Miss Jean Wald's father, of course, was a survivor of the attack in Balangega with the company C-90 infantry. And we had a discussion what we should do, and then subsequently, we later asked Yolanda Stern to go fly to Balangega and meet with Bishop Pedroso. So that's how we got started.
And matagal na ito.
Yeah, this was about 2000, maybe 2002 time frame. So we always, from that point on, we developed a strategy on how we should do this. And then, of course, we had asked Bishop Pedroso to come to Washington, D.C. We went to the White House. We went to the Papal Nuncio's office. We went to the Senate. We went to Congress. We also went to the White House. And then subsequent to that, Bishop Pedroso also went to the Vatican. The Vatican, in turn, wrote a letter on Bishop Pedroso's encouragement. The Vatican, the Holy See, wrote a letter to the White House and asked that the Vatican supports the return of the church bells. And that letter was sent over to President George Bush. I myself made sure that letter was received by the White House because I got a call from the White House. They said, "We haven't seen this letter. Can you send us a copy?" So I did send a copy of the letter from the Vatican to the White House, and of course, things just got bogged down because there were so many different extenuating circumstances.
So matagal pala to. The process was very long and it involved so many people. Sir Abner, ikaw kasi dito sa Pilipinas, I think ikaw ang journalist who wrote more stories, plenty of stories about the Balangida Bells. Bakit po?
Ganito yan. Bago ko makilala si Sunny, teka muna, gusto kong magpasalamat sa pagkakataong ito ko na maimbitahan dito. Pag bumabalik sa Eastern Samar, lalo na dito sa Balanggiga, at home ako. So ngayon, itong araw na pagpunta namin ni Sunny, parang ito yung unang pagkakataong makita na ni Sunny na dumating na nandito na yung bells, 3 years. Pero ako talagang hinatid ko dito yan noong 2018. Okay, na babacktrack tayo. Ang tanong mo is, bakit? Alam ko na yung istorya bago ko pa makilala si Sunny, na merong kwento ang isang bayan dito sa Eastern Samar, ang Balanggiga, na yung mga bells kinuha ng mga Amerikano noong 1901. Okay, nag-away sila. Pagkatapos, 100 taong pangarap nyo na makuha at nangyari nga noong 2018. Ngayon, si Sunny, nakikita niya ako sa The Filipino Channel sa ibang bansa. Nakikita niya yung brand of how I told my story. Medyo na-fascinate siya, nakuha niya yung kung paano. Kasi parang ganito lang yan, Mamiden. Like ngayon, pinagtinitingnan kita, napapascinate ako. Napakasimple mo lang. Nag-i-interview ka, nagkikwento ka. Siguro yun yung nakita ni Sunny. Sabi niya is, would you like to do the documentary version of the Balanggiga? Di na pa ganun ako. Paano? Dadaling ka namin sa Amerika. Totoo ba yan? Akala ko nung una baka scam eh. Okay? Pero sumakay ako doon sa proseso, doon sa journey. Talagang nadala niya ako hanggang doon sa loob ng kampo. Kasi yung bells, parang dito sa Pilipinas, hindi siya naka-expose sa plaza na accessible sa lahat. Parang imagine nyo na parang, hindi parang nasa loob siya ng kampo Krami sa Maynila o nasa kampo Aguinaldo, na nasa loob ng kampo talaga, na doon nilagay ng mga Amerikano yon. So narating ko, nabuo ko, doon sa proseso ng paggawa ko noong dokumentaryo, noong kwento, doon ako talagang na-obsess. May something sa puso ko na talagang sabi ko, ay, ano ito, idadasal ko ito na akala ko hindi mangyayari in our lifetime. Lagi kong sinasabi doon sa, may portion doon na talagang binatingting ko, doon sa dokumentaryo na ginawa ko na kapag hinanap nyo siya, madali nyo lang makita sa YouTube. Hindi akin yung YouTube channel, sa ABS-CBN yun. Doon nyo makikita yung dokumentaryong mga kampana ng Balanggiga. May visual kayo. Sabi ko is, ang sarap pakinggan itong tunog nitong kampanang ito, na kung itong tunog na ito maririnig ng bawat parishioner ng bayan ng Balanggiga. Pero alam ko, mangyayari yun. Mangyayari yun. So, yung mga ganun, niro-romanticize ko yung kwento, pero sino mag-aakalang yung salita kong yun, umakyat sa langit, pinagbigyan tayo ng Diyos na ibalik in our lifetime. Diba? Pagkatapos, nung naibalik na nga, talagang minake sure ko, sabi ko dun sa ABS-CBN desk, now you work in this type of news organization, make me home run this story. Ihahatid ko yung bells pauwi ng Balanggiga. So sumakay ako dun sa C-130, pauwi dito sa Balanggiga, dito sa Giwan Ibinabayon. Alam ng mga taga Balanggiga, naging napakalaking kwento noon, piyesta noon sa inyo. Yung buong prosesong yun, Ma'am Eden, maybe in the past, taga Balanggiga ako. Ngayon, medyo baka ako maiyak, okay? Maybe in the past, nag-reincarnate ako in a form of a journalist in this situation. Talagang sumakay ako sa panaginip ni Sunny at naiuwi, nandito na ngayon yung mga kampana nyo. Lingganay. Okay, bigyan lang kita ng isa pang trivia. Nagtuturo ako sa UP, alam ni Sunny yon. Isa sa mga modules ko is, hindi alam ng lahat na may ganun. Na kapag in-introduce ko sa mga estudyante ko yung kwento ng Balanggiga, na-amaze sila na, ay sir, alam namin may ganyan, pero hindi namin alam na yung mga ganitong side story. So it's a continuation saga itong Balanggiga, na kahit nandito na sa inyo, meron pa rin tayong mga gagawin.
True. Talagang hindi ko rin alam na may nangyaring Balanggiga encounter. I only knew when I was already studying in Manila, nag-field trip yung history class ko sa Ayala Museum, and there was a diorama. It was the first time na nalaman ko about that, kasi hindi naman na ituro sa elementary at sa high school. Gaano katagal yung journey?
Okay, yun sa akin. Okay, behind the scene, isang buwan yung actual na shooting. Kasi pumunta muna ako dito. Unang-una is kailangan makilala ko yung may-ari ng storya from the Filipino perspective. Meron kayong event dito na every September dyan sa bayan ng Balanggiga, yung Encounter Day, tama? So ako, dokumentarista, kailangan kong i-shoot yung araw na yon, mag-interview ng mga tao, okay? Para mabuo ko yung kwento from the perspective ng mga taga Balanggiga. And then, saka ako lumipad ng Amerika sa tulong ni Mr. Sunny Sampayan, puntahan sa iba't ibang parte ng Amerika yung mga perspective para mabuo ko yung kwento. Si Jean Wall is taga Phoenix, Arizona. So, ibang estado yon. Si Sunny na naglalabi kasama ng iba pang mga Pilipino like ni Maria na talagang masinsin sila sa pagkumbinsi sa mga mambabatas doon, taga New York. Okay? Tapos yung ilang veterano doon na nasa Washington. So, hindi siya madaling gawin. At yung pinakahiniling ko kay Sunny na pinagbigyan niya, kailangan kong makita yung mga kampana. Na nung nakita ko doon sa Warren Air Force Base, talagang tumayo yung balahibo ko. Kaya yung sinasabi ko in the past, taga Balanggiga ako, dito ako nakatira noon. Sabi ko, kailangan sana maiuwi ito. At naiuwi naman sa inyo. Tapos, nung magawa ko yun, 1 taon pa bago ko siya naisulat. Kasi, siyempre, sa broadcast, parang ganito ngayon, tinetake muna natin. Hindi agad siya na-ere kasi hindi siya pressing issue that time. Nung nagkaroon siya ng pagkakataong ma-ere, ayun na. Parang kahit paano nagkaroon na ng awareness yung mga tao talaga na merong ganoon. Kaya nung naibalik siya, yung ABS-CBN talagang kumbaga nagamit niya na, okay, kami lang yung nakapunta sa Amerika, doon sa documentary ni Abner. So, binalikan din namin yung istorya.
May I also
Okay,
add
yes.
something, man? When I met with, well, I didn't meet Abner first. I placed a call, I think, or I sent him an email. And then I actually said to him, I said, Abner, I would like, if you are available and if you want to do it, I would like to handpick you as the person who will tell the story about Balanggiga. And I said, Abner, there are 2 sides of the story about Balanggiga, the Filipino side and the American side. I want you to tell it the way it was. So that's how I was able to, work with Abner, and we came up with that documentary. So he did a fantastic job, because he covered all the angles. The at the time, of course, the only angle that has not been covered, of course, was the return of the bells, and of course, he made sure that he was on board the C-130 when the bells were being delivered over here. So, but I just want to make sure that your viewers understand how Mr. Mercado was picked for this project.
May tanong ko lang, Sir Sunny. Ano ba talaga yung reason kung bakit ang tagal nito? Bakit ayaw ng mga Amerikano ibalik ang Balanggiga Bells?
Well, that's a very, very difficult question to ask, and very difficult to answer, because there were so many different reasons as to why. But I can tell you that we made any and all the efforts to make things happen. But you have to understand that the NDAA, I believe, is good for 2 years. So once the writer is incorporated to the NDAA, which says you can't send the bills home, then you have to wait for 2 more years. If it was not 2 years, or if it's every 4 years, then you have to wait till 4 years up before you even make that attempt again. Once you make that attempt, the veteran gets wind of it, and then they will ask their lawmakers to block it. So that's the reason why it took so many years. It was not until later, I believe it was 2018, where other peoples have joined in the lobbying efforts. I mean, we had different sectors, from Americans to Filipinos, et cetera. We all had our efforts into this whole thing. Our one goal was to make sure that the bells are returned. My aim was to make sure that the bells are returned to the church, not to just the Philippines, not for political purposes, but send the bells back to the church where they came from, and they need to be used for what their original reasons was. Ring the bells to call people to worship. That was my my intent all along, was to make sure that those bells are returned back to Balanggiga.
Oh, and tayo naman also want to make sure that nobody, not one person, not one group, takes credit for this. No, gidamong inga mga tao and gidamong inga organisasyon, and it took decades. No, so this return of the bells cannot be and will not be, should not be credited to one person. Si kuan na nagpauli, and that is not true. No, kasi there were times, no, parang the pastors said, oy, ibabalik na yung bells. And then all of a sudden, nawawala na naman tayo. Why all of a sudden, just sa 2018? Kasi parang, actually, ako nabigla din ako because I thought, sabi nga ni Sir, it was not going to happen in our lifetime. All of us parang nabigla lahat.
Yes. Let me just kind of back up a little bit here, because my understanding, according to my contacts in Washington, D.C., was that the President of the United States had given the verbal order to have the bells returned. And of course, we were making that progress. We were making the preparation and everything to make things happen. And unfortunately, the Wyoming delegates got wind of it that we were making the efforts. It was going to be announced in June, I can't remember exactly what year, that when the Philippine president went to visit the United States, that the bells would be, hopefully, would be almost returned by that point. But then once the Wyoming delegates found out about it, they inserted another writer into the NDAA. So, but then, of course, like I said earlier, maraming nagtulong-tulong talaga mga either Filipinos, Americans, from different walks of life. They lobbied for the return of the church bells, and then at some point you have the secretaries, the Secretary of Defense Matis, and of course Secretary of Defense Lorenzana. I don't have the full knowledge of what took behind closed doors, but I knew for a fact that I told Secretary of Defense Lorenzana, I said, Mr. Lorenzana, Secretary Lorenzana, I said, I'm struggling again with the Wyoming delegates because now they're trying to block the church bells from being returned. And then he said, Sonny, I just met with Secretary of Defense Mattis in Singapore yesterday. He assured me that those bells will be returned. When he mentioned that to me, I was like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a light. And it's the cooperation is what we need, is the cooperation between our countries, the Philippines and the United States. If we have that full cooperation, I think we can do limitless things we can do a lot of things in life. We can do a greater cooperation between our two countries. So I think that was a big obstacle, by the way. That was a big obstacle. The veterans either didn't know it or they still don't know it. I keep telling them that was a major obstacle in improving the relationship of our two countries. I said to them, once the bells are returned, I think we will see a better cooperation between the two countries. I think we will continue to see the progress between the United States and the Philippines that I guess as far as economic agreement, as far as defense agreements as well too. I think we will see a continuation of improving cooperation between the two countries. I see that coming. Yeah.
For the both of you, ano ba yung naramdaman niyo when finally, eto na, the bells would be returned?
Ako, Ma'am Edith, talagang sabi ko nga kanina, ginusto kong ma-home run siya, maibalik ditong ako mismo yung makakakitang maiuwi na siya. Nung inabangan ko siya sa Villamor Air Base, nagduda pa ako baka ang ibabalik ng mga Amerikano replica lang. Pero hindi, nung binubuksan na yung crate, itinataas na, lukso ng dugo.
Kasi yun,
nakita ko siya, sabi ko, ay, ito yun. No doubt, ito yung nakita ko sa Wyoming. Salamat sa Diyos, binalik talaga ng mga Amerikano. So yun yung talagang immediate na naramdaman ko nung nakita ko siya sa Villamor na itinataas yung mga bell, inililitaw publicly. Kasi kung matatandaan nyo po, 15 nyo pala dito sineselebrate itong pagbabalik ng mga bells. Pero technically po, December 11 po siya uling tumapak
sa Pilipinas.
2018. Kasi nagtatlong araw pa siya sa Villamor Air Base Museum publicly para naman yung mga taga Metro Manila na gustong makita siya, makikita siya. Nakakatuwa kasi grabe yung pila noon. Lahat talaga ng tao pumupunta ng Villamor Air Base Museum para makita na, ito yung bell. So, ito yun. Talagang kumbaga, nabigyan natin ng awareness din yung mga Pilipino nung time na pauwi siya na may ganitong kwento ang mga taga-Eastern Samar, may ganitong kwento ang mga taga-Balanggiga.
Ikaw, Sir San.
Yes, ma'am. Ako naman po, I don't think I'm gonna be satisfied until the church are in their final place. To me, the bells being temporarily on the grounds of the church, to me, is not a completion of the original intended purpose. The bell needs to be rung to call people to worship. Right now, they are in the grounds of the church, and obviously we will need help from the people, your viewers, And until that's done, and until the church, until the bells are on the belfry, I will not rest until we have the support to build that belfry pole. When those bells are on the belfry, then I can salute smartly and said, okay, we did our job, and at least now the church and the community can actually hear those bells from, and hopefully one of these days I'll be around to actually ring those church bells. Yeah.
Pero is it the first time, was it your first time like this morning to see the bells back in the Philippines?
Yes, that was the very first time ever since. As a matter of fact, I've only seen, before today, ma'am, I've only seen 2 bells. The one in Wyoming. I never saw I knew about the
That's
bell in
in
Korea.
Korea.
Yes, but I never actually laid my hands or eyes on it. I've seen photos, but that's the extent. Today, seeing those 3, parang magkakapatid po, they were adopted by different, what we call it. So now they're all together, and it's great to see that at least now that all the bells are together. And I'm looking forward to Sunday when maybe I should hear the bells being rung for the very first time.
From the bells.
Very first time, exactly. And I hope we'll be able to ring more than one church bell on Sunday, that we can ring 3 church bells. And when I do have the opportunity to ring those church bells, I also want you viewers to understand, because Filipinos, siyempre, desperate measure calls for desperate action, siyempre. Filipinos were actually taking metal church bells and melting them and turning them into ammunitions. So we need to be grateful. We need to be thankful for what the Americans did of taking these church bells, because if the bells were not taken, they may have been melted and became ammunitions instead. And I don't think a lot of people knew that. So I need to stress that we need to be thankful that the Americans took these church bells, because otherwise they would have probably been melted and there would have been no more Bangiga bells today. So again, I'm looking forward to hearing those church bells from tomorrow po.
Sir Abner, ano ba yung, sabi mo pa nga kanina, maybe meron pa rin tayong magagawa para, ang sabi nga ni Sir Sunny, the intent really, na babalik siya and then gagamitin talaga siya, hindi lang siya pang museum. Because I remember when ibabalik pa lang yung bells sa Pilipinas, there were some talks na, di ba, some lawmakers nagsuggest na doon lang sa Manila, hindi siya iuuwi lagay sa museum to give chance to all Filipinos to see the bells. And then yung iba hindi pwede, because the intention really was for the bells to be returned to Balaniga. Ano kaya pwede maitulong natin para makagawa tayo ng belfry and then mabalik na talaga siya?
Bago kami magpunta dito sa programa nyo, nagkaroon kami ng paanyaya mula kay Bishop Marquez dito sa diocese, sa Bishop's Residence. Isa yan sa mga tanong ko, Ma'am Aiden. Kasi kanina habang nagtatanghalian kami, ang mga tanong ko is pang journalistic na tanong. Sabi ko, Bishop, ano ngayon ang plano natin? Kasi nga nandun naka-expose, hindi siya nagagamit sa talagang purpose niya. Maging kampanaryo at lingganay na tagatawag doon sa kung saan siya dapat nakapwesto para yung mga parishioner pupunta. Okay? Ang sinasabi ng obispo is may mga plano, may mga proyekto na magtayo talaga ng kampanaryo. Pero ang challenge, ang hamon is saan kukunin ng pondo. So siguro pwedeng doon tayo magsimula. Ako naman ang sabi ko, Bishop, alam mo kapag sa isang parte ng Pilipinas nagkaroon ng sakuna, nagkaroon ng kalamidad, laging ang mga parokya sa Maynila may second collection. Ibibigay natin ito sa parting ito ng Naga o ng Eastern Samar o ng Cebu o ng Bohol para doon sa mga nawalan ng tahanan o para meron tayong maibigay na pangkain nila. Ito, nakikita ko na baka pwedeng gawin natin ganun, Ma'am Eden. I-involve na natin ang buong bansa. Kasi tingin ko naman ang may-ari ng kwento ng Balanggiga, hindi lang kayong mga taga-Eastern Samar, hindi lang itong mga kwento ng taga-Balanggiga. Buong bansa, buong sambayan ng Pilipino ang nangarap sa loob ng 100 taon mahigit na maibalik ito. Maliit lang yung bariyang hinihingi ng mga taga-Balanggiga para makonstruct yung yung kampanaryo. Pwedeng yan, pwedeng sa forma ng social media, manawagan tayo, o yun nga, yung forma ng second collection sa lahat ng parokya, through CBCP ordinance. Maraming tutulong, Ma'am Eden. So ang akin lang is, pagtulong-tulungan natin, yun lang sa ngayon talagang hinihiling ng parokya ng Balanggiga, maitayo na yung kampanaryo. Okay? Para kumbaga, maibalik na natin yung mga lingganay na nandoon, na nagagamit sa talagang purpose niya.
Oo. Kasi parang, ako from my observation, parang ang nangyayari ngayon, yung unang-una niyang is for tourism purposes. You go there, see the bells, no? And hindi naman talaga yan yung purpose, di ba? Punta ka sa Balanggiga para makita mo yung mga bells. Hindi naman talaga yan yung purpose. The purpose is for it, ilagay sa kampanaryo, pag magmimisa, yun, ang ganda pa naman ng tunog. Di ba?
Yes, solid,
Iba
solid.
ang tunog ng mga bells na yan.
Solid.
Talagang So we are hoping na pagtutulong-tulungan yan para ultimately, sabi nga ni Sir Sunny, we can rest, our hearts can rest. Sabihin na natin, you did a great job, at hindi lang eto talaga, ibinalik talaga siya sa kung saan siya kinuha. Mga sir, thank you very much for your story. Alam mo, ngayon ko lang, ako ngayon ko lang talaga mas naintindihan yung efforts, yung ginawa niyo, Sir Sunny, Sir Abner, at saka lahat ng mga Amerikano, sa mga Pilipino. Kasi nga, uulitin ko, when the bells were about to arrive in the Philippines, ito parang ito ina-attribute lang dun sa isang tao, which should not be. Kasi hindi lang to gawa ng isang tao, hindi lang to nangyari, the negotiation, hindi lang nangyari ng ilang araw, ilang buwan, ilang linggo, but it took decades.
Yes.
And we owe this mga kasangkayan din ni Eastern Samar, si Sir Sunny, Sir Abner. They really, nag-ingay sila eh. They did their job really well, and to think that they are not from Eastern Samar. Although yung asawa ni Sir Sunny is from Northern Samar. Kapitbahay. Mga sir, thank you very much for
Salamat,
your
Ma'am
time.
Eden. Karangalan namin.
Thank you po. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Sir Abner.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Ayun nga tanong makasakayan daw mga salamat.
VW Conversations. It's about people. It's about issues. It's about us. VW Conversations. Usahang katungod, usahang kinahanglanon. Pag-iristorya ita ang kinahanglan pag-iristoryahan. VW Conversations.
Alright, we are back on VW Conversations. Okay. Iton weather system nga nakaka-apekto pa aton yan na amo iton intertropical convergence zone. Ini ito nakaka-apekto iton Eastern Visayas, iton Caraga, haranila ini dili ata dalay terutupad barubaba nato, no? And asya ini nga mayada kita mga sinisaring localized thunderstorms, tigda nga pag-uran pastikalan at nga uurang kagabi, makalilisang talaga. Kukusugi, gasi nga di na tihuraw. Anak naman gasi nga di na kung tatiuran nga kagabi kay kakalip, giupay manggudaan panahon, no? Asya nga nakapanmunak pero waray talaga. Asya na talaga ini iton December weather. Wala tayong magagawa. Importante na lang paghirot kita. Agin pag-iinuruutruhon ta, especially if you are residing didahiton mga ligidhin salog, ligidhin mga bukid, makaharad kasi bangin magtimpag, kay sigisig man iton uuran, nahumog iton tuna. Tubig, kumusta naman itong tubig? Kay maura naman. Niyan han Saturday, nakadwa ka may pangdan. Nasa rin naman dit anak mga dada, malaong nalihog daw yung panawag, ang kawarak mahinam tubig, nakapangarak ng pagbayad. Ako nagbabayad kami, waray ko no tubig, nga naagos, nga to iniha, may pangdan. So, sana Panginanong undaman, hiton atin mga taga BWD, no? Ano ini itong so gadin nga mga sitwasyon kay no ilabi nang kalagsan makuri na mait mahinwara na nira pag-aalugan depende ka namang good lahit ano ini tubig nga naturo din naman doon yung gripo. Okay, and tomorrow mga kasangkayan on VW Conversations may ada naton hini mga makakaupod. We have exchange students tikang iniha Indonesia who are here now dahil Eastern Samar State University for their cultural program. So, kuan inihira, I think lilima inihira nga mga estudyante ano ini from the ano ini from Okrida, no? So they are here, they will be staying here for a few days para naman gihapon may nira naman guti ay nga immersion para naman nira kitaon iton kultura natin dinhi, no? Aton Eastern Samar. So we will get to know them better tomorrow, no? And for everybody, waray kamo dinhi, waray man kamo dinhi, ada kamo hiton ibang parte hiton Pilipinas or kalibutan, nagpapadayon yan na iton aton Surf in the City day 3 of our surfing competition, and you can watch it live dida naman hiton S10 News, no? Kuan ini para makakuha kamo hin mga updates, makakita kamo hiton nga mga suga detayada, magkarit nga mga nag-surf. Bangin din na kamo nakalawha ka at nakamukalaw ito nag-surf. But it's okay because that is, you know, our way, no, of promoting kumbaga nga tanang kita nga mga taga-Borongan, we should do our share in promoting hiton aton syudad, hiton Borongan, di ba? Because we want to invite more tourists to come. It has been announced mismo by the Philippine Airlines President and CEO, Captain Stanley Nang, nga they will be opening hiton Cebu, Borongan, Manila nga ruta, hiton ira eroplano, and ang hiraman ini anagyakan that the first flight will be on December 19. Tama ini nga panahon magpaparauli iton damo nga mga estehanan, mga burunganan tikang Manila, tikang Cebu, or anywhere else. It's going to make travel easier for them, diba? So asya ini mga kasangkayan in this flights, no? Pag natuloy na to, this is not only going to benefit Boronganons, this is going to benefit the whole province of Eastern Samar. Makaka-benepisyo ini ito na aton mga kabugtuan, tikang naman hiton anyaw naton nga mga bungto. And even parts of Northern Samar, dinihiton Pacific Coast. Okay? And diyan Saturday, igin-announce ni Mayor Dayan Agda that tomorrow, November 29, they will be signing the Memorandum of Agreement with Philippine Airlines. I think this will be in Manila. Okay? So again, don't forget, you still have time for those of you who might be interested to join our Bikini Open. This is open para itong mga babae, mga lalaki na edad 18 to 26 years old. Okay? If ever you're interested, pakisend la iton iyo a picture in your swimwear plus a video and your certificate of live birth or ID nga may ada dito date of birth, nagpapamatuod lang nga siya ini itong iyong edad. This is open para itong mga taga Region 8 and for those surfers who are competing in the Surf in the City. Nga dala inibuwas hiton club iton iyong pag-submit, and then the qualifiers will be announced on November 30. Ito niyo kung entries, the pictures, pakisendla niyo ngadto hiton BCPC na page Borongan City Press Club. Thank you very much, sa iyong tanan mga kasangkayan, for being with us today on Beautiful Conversations. Until next time, God bless.
VW Conversations. It's about people. It's about issues. It's about us. VW Conversations. Usahang katungod, usahang kinahanglanon. Pag-iristorya ita ang kinahanglan pag-iristorya. VW Conversations.
With the truth that truly sets us free.